What's up, everybody? In today's video, I think it's time that we had a pretty frank conversation about Canon's lens lineup and the RF mount system. We've got news from Sigma, we've got news from CP+. There's a lot going on around Canon's lens system, and I think we need to talk about it. So let's jump in on the news and the details. So Canon has always had a kind of a stronghold on their mounts and lens manufacturing in general. They've kind of set the stage, set the standard for their lenses, and it's no different with the RF system. The RF system has been pretty much a proprietary lens mount since its release with the R line in 2018. It's been a core selling point for their mirrorless system, but I think we need to be honest. There's been an elephant in the room since the start, which is affordability and diversity when it comes to the different options that we have for the RF mount. And that's traditionally where third-party manufacturers would come in, but unfortunately, since the mount was announced and released, that has been kind of an unknown for Canon users. And the hope is, the news is, that 2025 might finally be when that ends, and where third-party manufacturers can come in and where Canon can come in and help Canon users with affordability and diversity, because Canon seems to be inching closer to opening the door just a little bit wider. So at the CP+ show this year, Canon Executive Vice President and Imaging Group Manager Tayoshi Takura, and I really hope that I got that name right, gave us some kind of glimpses into what is going on at Canon and where they are with their ongoing collaborations with third-party manufacturers. And one thing that he said was particularly noteworthy and kind of stood out, which is that Canon is more than halfway through the communications that it's doing with manufacturers regarding third-party RF lenses. I don't know what halfway means, but it means that they're somewhere. And this is big news, considering the fact that they've continued for years to have tight control over the mount, and that they've been honestly relatively quiet about any concrete details on what we should expect down the road. But he also clarified that Canon's primary focus is and remains to be expanding its own lineup of RF lenses. Canon has a huge financial motivation here. Canon's L-series lenses are incredible performers, and they bring in a significant amount of profit because they're premium priced. But for enthusiasts, budget-conscious shooters, folks who are just getting into this industry or are delivering product that doesn't necessarily need to be the absolute top pinnacle of optical quality, they don't really have as many options for low-cost shooting. So with Canon slowly starting to open up third-party options from folks like Tamron and Samyang, which already offer a few autofocus RF lenses, and Sigma, who's been working on the RF-S lens system, these moves are going to be well received, especially for folks who are shooting with the kind of APS-C flagship, which is the R7. And we're seeing more news about more APS-C cameras coming out this year with an R7V, an R7 Mark II, an R50V, the RV, all of which I've done videos on, and I'll link to those. But when it comes to full frame RF lenses, it's been small, right? They're keeping their cards close to the chest, and they're stalling, to be quite honest, because it's really not clear if Canon will ever offer full access for high-end third-party lenses to the RF mount. But progress for brands like Tamron and Samyang, I mean, obviously they're going in the right direction. But for folks who are really hoping for budget-friendly alternatives to things like Canon L glass, these collaborations do show just a little bit of improvement. But to be quite honest, in my mind, I think we're still in a place where if you're budget conscious and you're looking for a low cost option to be shooting high optical quality on the RF mount, you're going to be looking at EF glass, in some cases from Canon and from these other manufacturers. Because otherwise, on the premium side, you're still heavily dependent on Canon's first-party glass offerings. But rumors are suggesting that Sigma and others will start rolling out RF full-frame lenses. So let's talk for a minute about Sigma's 2025 lens plans. So at the CP+ show, Sigma's president Kazuto Yokama took to the stage and talked about the future of Sigma lenses. And honestly, he dropped some very interesting hints while he was on stage. For one, he offered that they would be redesigning their 35mm 1.4 art lens. I am shooting on that lens right now for the EF mount. And if you followed Sigma's art lens lineup, you know that the 35-1.4 was phenomenal, is phenomenal. Again, I'm shooting on it right now. I love this lens. It's my favorite video lens. But it came with some caveats. I mean, they loved the optical quality. I love the optical quality, but it is heavy. The autofocus performance is not phenomenal. It's loud, and it doesn't have any sort of stabilization, and it wasn't cheap. So Sigma is going to be re-releasing the 1.4 lens to be smaller, lighter, and feature faster and more silent autofocus. We don't have full specs, but he was clear that Sigma remains committed to maintaining the optical brilliance that we saw in the Art series, and he confirmed that it'll be launching in the Sony E-mount, Leica mount. But here's where he kind of dropped an interesting detail, which is that he intends, or Sigma intends, to primarily focus on full-frame lenses moving forward. He acknowledged that APS-C markets remain a significant part of their manufacturing, and they continue to intend on producing APS-C products, but that full-frame lenses are going to lead the charge, and that they see full-frame as a significant component to their growth strategy. And I can't imagine that they would say that unless Canon, who is the, in most cases, number one, and trading back and forth with Sony, the number two camera body manufacturer in the market. So their strategy is smart, right? Refine what already has been doing really well and has been very popular so that it would do well in a pretty competitive market, especially as Canon has become more open to third-party partnerships. But if we take a step back for a moment and continue to talk about the APS-C lineup, Canon's APS-C lineup is going to be seeing a serious amount of expansion this year with 3 new RFS lenses. And we talked about this a little bit in the last couple of days with the RV announcement and the fact that we've seen some kind of interesting items being attached to what might be their new compact line. Specifically expecting RFS power zooms with a wide angle and a standard zoom. And power zoom is great for video shooters. You can create smooth, kind of motorized focal length adjustments. And these can be great for folks who are using APS-C cameras for vlogging and content creation. It creates a lot of production quality in a small package. The other thing we're hearing about on the RFS system is a potential fast prime. Something that it might be an RF mount version of the EFM 32mm 1.4 with the STM motor. I guess STM motor, the M in motors, yeah. You know what I mean. This is a fan favorite lens for folks who are shooting on the EOS M system. And since EOS M is dead, we're expecting this V series on the APS-C side to potentially replace it, which is what I talked about in my last video when we talked about the RV. And if that's the case, then that's great because Canon needs to be providing more prime fast lenses for the APS-C side of their lineup. And kind of in the opposite of what we see on the full frame side, it can't just be Sigma offering cool prime lenses. Canon needs to be in this game as well. We need good competition to make a strong market for users of Canon cameras. And finally, there has been some discussion about a constant aperture zoom lens. The potential for an RFS 2.8 IS model, things like the 17 to 55 2.8 were very popular lenses for crop sensor users. So a modern RFS equivalent with a range around 15 to, as far as I guess they could take it, would probably be something that would do well. Because these lenses are specifically timed to launch with these new RFS mount cameras like I mentioned, the R50V, the RV, the R7, the R7 II, the R7V, right? We're expected to see a whole slate of APS-C cameras in 2025, and it's exciting to potentially see not only third-party, but also first-party updated crop sensor lenses to go along with those releases. So the hope is that 2025 sees a significant amount of improvement on hybrid options for folks shooting in crop sensor cameras, for content creators, vloggers, and just folks who are looking for an inexpensive or at least more value-oriented entrance into this kind of hybrid system. Now let's go back to talking about RF lenses, specifically from Canon and what we should expect in 2025, starting with tilt shift models. So we are expecting autofocus tilt shift from Canon, specifically a TSR14 f4 and a TSR24 f3.5, both in L variety. These have been rumored for years, but the hope is that this year we finally see them. For architectural and landscape photographers, these would be huge and have been much anticipated, taking the optical quality of L glass with the precision of tilt shift functionality. Next on the list of rumored RF lenses, we are expecting a 200 to 500 f4 USM, also L, with a built-in teleconverter. Again, this is kind of a dream lens for wildlife and sports shooters, and probably a great lens to pair with the new R1, but this isn't going to be cheap. This is going to be an incredibly expensive lens. Another lens segment that we're looking for an update for is astrophotography, where we're expecting an ultra-wide prime. We've had Canon patents for a lens like this for quite some time, but it looks like we're finally going to be seeing a launch, hopefully by the end of this year, 2025, to give astrophotographers a native RF option. Last but not least, Canon has had some big releases on its f2.8 IS STM lenses. They claim that they bring close to L quality, but for a significant price benefit, considering the fact that they don't have all of the features of current RF L lenses. We've seen the 16 to 28 and the 28 to 70. The 16 to 28 has been relatively well received, but the 28 to 70 did face some criticism, particularly for its performance at the long end. I actually did a video about this lens and why it's not really L quality, considering the differences between this and a current modern L lens. But even though it's had mixed reviews, the lens is being praised for having a lightweight design. It's got quick autofocus, and for the price, honestly, it's a pretty decent option. But we doubt that Canon is going to stop at just these two lenses for this series, so we're probably going to see a telephoto option, something that is beyond the 70mm range to kind of complete the trinity, so to speak, in their STM line. Whether this is going to be an actual 70 to 200 is to be seen, maybe a 70 to 180. But as someone who owns an EF 70 to 200, it's actually right there, I wouldn't mind taking a look at a less expensive alternative, because to replace that lens with internal zoom, image stabilization, f2.8 aperture, L quality optics, I'd have to shell out about $3,000, and honestly, I don't use it that much. So what does that all mean for Canon users and folks who are looking at all of these different lens options? For one, it means that everybody's kind of gearing up to expand options for optics on the Canon system. Not just in terms of quantity, but in terms of variety. So with Canon's potential third-party collaborations, with more potential for Tamron and Samyang and Sigma to get into the full frame and the crop sensor side of things, it's exciting, but I think it's still moving slower than it should, and I think Canon is being purposefully restrictive. And they've pretty much said that publicly because, honestly, their full frame glass makes them a lot of money. But I am glad to hear folks like Sigma committing to improvements in their full frame lenses, and my hope is that that is an indication that we'll see more on the RF side of things. So it's a lot of things in development, but 2025 looks to be shaping up to be a big year for photography, especially if you're shooting Canon and you're in the market for updated glass. And if that's the kind of thing that you're into, then I'd appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you thought that this video was informative. I've got gear lists down below, both for all the photography gear that I use when I'm out shooting clients, everything that I use here in the studio to make these videos, everything that I use when I'm out doing adventure videos, as well as my 2025 guide to getting started for photography and content creation. Those are Amazon affiliate links, so that does make me just a little bit if you click on those. But a free and easy way to support the channel, as always, is to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you thought that this video was informative. And again, hoping that we see more from both Canon and these other manufacturers on the lens side of things, right? We have to vote with our dollars, and hopefully that gets Canon producing more interesting lenses and allowing third-party vendors to do the same. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.